What's up, college football fans? Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. I am Peter Ariz alongside D Money. Welcome in to our show. The college football season's over. Ohio State crowned national champions last night. But the offseason, that's the best part of college football these days with all the movement, the transfers. Some would say it's not the best part, but we think it is here at Group Chat Football Live. So we've been covering all the moves, the transfer stuff, the coaching movement, the recruiting as next class, the 2026 class is starting to heat up a little bit. But we'll actually start today, D, with a class of 2025 prospect in Tai Haywood, who looks like he's on the verge of a commitment here.
Yeah, a lot of buzz that Tai Haywood, the longtime Alabama commit, did not sign on signing day. Alabama, according to reports, got frustrated that he was flirting with Michigan, decided, hey, just, go ahead and go there if that's what you want to go. He ends up visiting Michigan, and all reports indicate that he is heading in that direction. And if it takes place, Michigan has landed a huge, huge piece of its offensive puzzle to build around number one overall recruit Bryce Underwood. And man, if you're Michigan, it has been one success after another in the last, say, month and a half, really since that Ohio State game, since the Bryce Underwood commit, really. This has been trending in the right direction for the Michigan Wolverines. So talking about Tai Haywood, 6'5", 285 from Dallas, Texas, Ryan High School, 5-star player, number 18 player overall in America, number 4 offensive tackle. And the key, when you look at his huddle, Pete, what you're going to pull up here is power. This is somebody with a 58-6 personal record in the shot put. That is extremely explosive. And when you watch him here, the frame stands out, right? I mean, he looks lean, he's in shape, but he has the exact body type you want in a college football playoff caliber tackle. But look at the drive and look at the power in his hands. When you have that kind of shot put that he has on the track, that is explosive power, which allows you to just knock guys back off the ball in the run game. Also helps you in pass protection, but really the run blocking and power is what stands out with Haywood. He does have athleticism. He's verified athleticism as well, has always tested well at the combine circuit. Visited FSU and TCU during his first round of visits, but this is trending towards a Michigan commit. You look at Michigan. We talked about Bryce Underwood, Andrew Babaloa, the 5-star offensive tackle from Kansas. Now you potentially have 2 5-star offensive tackles with a 5-star quarterback. You are already a top 10 class. You move up even higher with the commitment or the signing of a Tai Haywood. You got Avery Gaja, Caden Strayhorn from IMG there to also fill out that offensive line. So, Coach Moore, we know he loves his offensive linemen. This would be an on-brand pickup and somebody that would fit perfectly alongside Babaloa in front of Underwood.
And when I watch this tape, you talk about the power. I'm looking at the flexibility and the bend that he has in his knees. I mean, this is a very tall tackle, which obviously the tackles are in today's day and age are taller and leaner and more athletic than they had been in the past because they have to deal with these pass rushers. But these taller tackles, a lot of times, if they're waist benders, they're losing that leverage leaning forward. This guy has really nice bend at the knees, really flexible, is able to stay powerful even through some of that flexibility. And you see him, getting into the open field, getting downfield, the total package here. And it's a no-brainer why this is a top 20 player in the class.
Yeah, and you see some of that verified athleticism when he gets out there in space. But look, this is Michigan. Even if they have Bryce Underwood, they are going to be physical up front. It is not going to be a finesse offense, no matter if you have the number 1 quarterback in the country. We saw what they did with number 1 first-round type quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. Still was a run-based offense. I think with Bryce Underwood, who he himself has the ability to run, I think you'll see that. But again, this would be, and it looks like all signs pointing in this direction, a natural fit with Michigan, with Babaloa, with Underwood. And look at the versatility of Coach Moore and his staff to be able to go to Kansas for Babaloa and then deep into the heart of Texas, Dallas, Texas, one of the most contested recruiting areas in country. Probably, I'd say Dallas and Atlanta, if you're talking about battleground cities where you have all the big boys trying to get players, whether it's Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, all the SEC schools really. And then for Michigan, from the Midwest, from the Big Ten, to go into the heart of Texas and grab a player like this would be a major, major statement. Again, you already went into Kansas to grab Babaloa. So going outside of your territory to get players that can help you win a championship with your homegrown quarterback, Bryce Underwood.
Are you surprised with the timing of when these predictions started to leak? The afternoon of the national championship game where Ohio State was playing, and you know that Michigan's been working on this one for a while. So I find the timing rather peculiar, so to speak. But nothing would be better for the Wolverine fans than to get that commitment to pop today.
Well, I think he visited, right? So that's part. So he visited, I want to say, this weekend. So that's where a lot of the momentum is coming from. But this game could not be bigger as far as national championship last year, Michigan, national championship this year, Ohio State, during Ohio State's national championship year and Michigan's rebuilding year. Michigan beats Ohio State. You add Bryce Underwood to the mix. You got Jeremiah Smith, the best player in the country, coming back for Ohio State. A new quarterback somewhere, whether it's Julian Sain, whether it's somebody else. This rivalry is looking extremely marquee. Not that it wasn't already, but even more so in the next few years, because you have proven now both of these programs are championship programs at the same time, which hasn't always been the case. A lot of times one's been down, one's been up, and even Michigan, when they're down a little, obviously can still beat Ohio State, and both of them had that recent championship pedigree. Michigan looking to restock the talent. This would be a huge, huge, huge move that fits in exactly with what they are as a program and would expand their geographic footprint.
So since we're already talking about Ohio State a bit here with Michigan, let's get into Devin Brown, backup quarterback for Ohio State, who he stuck with the team through the playoff run here. He'd entered the portal. He was really trying to keep a lot of the talk about transfer down because he said he wanted to see this thing out with the team. Obviously, you can't take the national championship away from him as he was a part of the run as the backup quarterback. But the long rumored spot for him has been Cal. And almost immediately after the game, the Pete Nakos predictions started to pop for Cal. And this is going to be a really interesting situation developing in the Cal QB room, because you have Jaron Sagapolatelli, who was signed with Oregon, got out of that letter of intent, and then signed with Cal, 5-star out of Hawaii, who really made that move because it was an easier path to start. You're bringing in Devin Brown now, a guy who's been in college for 3 years, only has 2 years of eligibility. He's not going over there to take a backseat to a true freshman coming in. He's a highly talented. Look at his numbers from Utah in high school. Had like 58 touchdowns his senior year. Big dude, big arm, can move a little bit. Again, hasn't had the opportunity really at Ohio State. They went and got Will Howard this offseason. But that Cal quarterback room, you lose Fernando Mendoza, and you come back and you land 2 highly talented passers at that position. And to me, you're in a really good spot now. If you're a Cal fan, you have to feel pretty good about that room.
Yeah, very interesting. You had the number 3 quarterback in the portal, right, leave your school to enter the portal. Somebody who's led your program 2 consecutive bowl games and has really been the face of the program, the burrito everybody knows about, and just the post-game interview against Stanford, the great game against Miami with College Game Day in town. It was all about Fernando Mendoza. Now, your quarterback room has arguably improved, even though you lost him and you also lost his backup. So looking at Devin Brown, the comp that you've had since high school, and I think continues to be the comp, not in terms of impact. I'm not saying this is an NFL starting quarterback, but just in terms of the way they play. Kind of that Sam Darnold, similar size basketball player. Sam Darnold was also a basketball player. Great athlete, really, really quick for his size, 4 shuttle, a ton of experience. He's a class of 22, so now entering into his 4th year. You would have to say that he is the favorite over Sagapolatelli. Now, he didn't go there, it's about Jaron now, Sagapolatelli, to be the backup. If he wanted to be the backup, he would have stayed at Oregon. He thought that the path to start there was trickier. So now you got a guy coming in with Brown that has multiple years of eligibility and is going to be the favorite because of his experience and the fact that he himself was really ranked just where Sagapolatelli was only, in 2022 as opposed to 2025 class. So someone with comparable talent, more experience coming into your spot, he cannot be happy about it. For a while, this was something that was rumored before the Sagapolatelli thing went down. So I thought this was going to go away, once that opportunity came up, and it was just sort of a timing thing. But the fact that he stayed with Cal through this process is extremely interesting. And if you're Coach Wilcox, you're probably going to lose one of these guys, depending who loses the quarterback battle. Maybe it's just, listen, we got to win. We want to keep making bowls. We want to keep pushing forward here in the ACC. Let them battle it out. Let the best man win. Devin Brown is not some journeyman. He's got physical ability as well. You saw what Kyle McCord did when he went to Syracuse, coming from Ohio State, and the success he's had. Of course, we all know about Joe Burrow, who followed a similar path as an Ohio State backup and then ended up being, McCord was a starter. Burrow was a backup, ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in the world. Not saying this is going to happen for Brown, just saying the fact that he hasn't played a ton to this point doesn't mean he cannot be a big-time ACC player.
And Canes Cats Heat 305 makes the point as well that, of course, you have the fact that he was committed there for 9 months. And I will say, if you are Sagapolatelli, it might be a little bit different too, because at Oregon you have Dante Moore in front of you. You have Akili Smith Jr. in your same class coming in with you here. It's Devin Brown, and then it's hypothetically you're the next man up, right? So the question, though, is Devin Brown hasn't played much football, has 2 years of eligibility left. If he blows the doors off of it this year, yeah, maybe he goes, but you don't really see guys like that just play 1 year, have a good year, and go these days. Like, we always talk about the experience of the position. I don't see him as a one and done guy. So that's what makes it a little different. It's not a one and done situation with him necessarily.
And by the way, to be clear, this is not official at this point, right? I should be clear about that. This is not an official commitment. This is just a crystal ball, but this is something that's been percolating for a while. So the fact that after Sagapolatelli makes his decision and enrolls, this gets predicted right after Ohio State wins the championship. Of course, Brown was with that team. Very, very interesting, and we'll see how it develops. But if you're Ohio State, you better be sure that Julian Sain is better than Devin Brown. I mean, you just won a national championship. Your program is at the absolute peak of its powers. You definitely don't want to take a step back by picking the wrong quarterback. So one thing to monitor here is if Devin Brown does go to Cal, and let's say it's Julian Sain ends up being the starting quarterback for Ohio State next year. Neither of those two things are guaranteed. Let's just play through the hypothetical. If Brown has one of these monster seasons in the ACC like a Kyle McCord had, and then you look at Sain and he's disappointing, maybe the size, maybe the athletic ability and arm talent isn't what you expected from a five-star player. He's not the most physically gifted five-star you've ever seen. Could be interesting to watch. Again, I'm not going to be too worried for Ohio State. They just won the national championship. The champagne is still on their jackets here as we record this on Tuesday morning. But something to consider. This is not a slam dunk that Julian Sain is a better quarterback than Devin Brown, if that's indeed the path that Ohio State goes on. Yeah,
and you see his highlights, his high school highlights running here. Not much from college. There is some stuff we would get hit with copyright, but you can see that. I mean, the big arm that he has, big hands, just grip and rip.
The release, the overall fluidity, and it just reminds me a lot of Sam Darnold. You see the lateral quickness there. I mean, this is a big-time player. If this guy was coming out of high school and you're watching this film, you're saying, all right, Cal's got their quarterback of the future. Who's next? So that's kind of the interesting part about this is it's not one guy with experience who's more of a lesser talented guy versus a super talented freshman. These are guys that are similar high school recruits, one of whom has many, many more years of experience playing with Ohio State for the last 3 years. So very interesting quarterback battle. If you're Cal, you need to be the most active program in the country in the spring transfer window for wide receivers. You've added some, but you need to keep putting talent into that room because you got two quarterbacks who can go.
A program that's off to a nice start for 2026. We talk about them, it seems like every day here on Group Chat Football Live. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. and that's the North Carolina Tar Heels. As we spoke a couple days ago, I should say last week, about the hire of Armand Hawkins at defensive backs coach. Came over from Washington with Steve Belichick. A lot of talk that he was really the primary recruiter for a lot of the defensive backs that they've brought over there the last couple years, and a guy who has his, he's firmly entrenched in Southern California, and he lands a pair of California corners. I don't know that this is something that's been very commonplace for North Carolina, going to the West Coast and grabbing guys, but with Bill Belichick, they're going East Coast to West Coast, North to South. They're going to go all over for players. And this is a nice start here with Marcellus Ryan and Justin Lewis. Two corners, two different players. Justin Lewis, taller, leaner. Marcellus Ryan seems to always be around the ball, smaller, about 5'10". We'll play both of their huddles here in just a second. But D, your thoughts on, before the players themselves, just like early on here, going and getting guys from pretty big programs over there in Southern California.
So we know Coach Belichick likes his corners, and we mentioned this with some of the portal videos we've done on UNC, and then of course the hiring of Coach Armando Hawkins. They call him Mondo. This is a West Coast pipeline that is developing in the defensive backfield of North Carolina. Now, Coach Hawkins previously was Steve Belichick at Washington. Much more natural fit for these California corners because it's Washington. They have a tradition of getting California DBs. But Coach Hawkins has just taken that and transported. Again, we talked about it on prior videos, but just to recap what we're talking about with North Carolina. It's starting with the portal. So in the portal, you have grabbed Thaddeus Dixon from Southern California, Washington transfer, very experienced. Peyton Waters, a younger player, multiple years of eligibility from Washington, also Southern California. He's playing safety. You have Jason Robinson, who's a receiver, but another Southern California kid who was at Washington with Coach Hawkins. Kamori House, a linebacker, Southern California, with Coach Hawkins at Washington. So you've seen the Washington connections from Hawkins play immediate dividends. Sorry, the Washington/California connections from Coach Hawkins pay immediate dividends. And now at the high school ranks for the class of 26, where does he go for corners? Southern California. Coach Hawkins is from Rancho Cucamonga, which is a little bit east of Los Angeles, but right there in the San Bernardino area. Who does he go and get? Justin Lewis from Rancho Cucamonga. 6'2", 165, three-star player, number 44 corner in the country. Offers from Arizona, Colorado, Louisville, Miami, Nebraska, SMU, Syracuse, and then, of course, Washington. That was probably delivered personally by Mr. Hawkins, Coach Mondo. He recruited him very heavily, had him in visits twice in Seattle, did in homes, but ultimately the relationship carried over beyond the school. And if you listen to Justin Lewis and his commitment story, he says, I love Coach Hawkins. Mondo's been with me since day one. Playing for Coach Bill Belichick is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity I had to take full advantage of. And, just watching the film, you see the speed right here. This guy is speed on a dead stop to hawk this guy down. Long, explosive hitter. You see him on special teams, which is going to be a role he could play early on in North Carolina, another thing Bill Belichick loves. So this is an on-brand pickup, just given the connection with Coach Hawkins, the way this defensive backfield has been trending in the portal, and then the fact that this is a guy that can play man coverage, has some length, and will help you on special teams as well.
Yeah, you mentioned explosive hitter. He's 6'2", I've seen him listed at 165, 170. So obviously the putting on the weight will be natural, but when you see him striking and knocking guys back on this tape, you see him on special teams here. Like, I don't worry about the weight. I don't worry about his physicality, because when you watch him, guys are falling the other way when he's making a lot of these tackles.
Yeah, he's got twitch in his body. The length is obvious there. If he ever has to move to safety, I'm not saying he does. He does have the physicality to go there. You don't know how his body's going to react. But, just an impressive player and somebody that is part of what's becoming a pipeline. And you got plenty of corners in North Carolina. That's a talent-rich state. I think of Jair Alexander, who went to Louisville, who's now one of the best corners in the NFL. There are more from the state of North Carolina. But there's no reason why you can't have an expanded map if you're Bill Belichick and have that national profile. Clearly, with the Hawkins connection, California, Southern California is going to be a sweet spot for North Carolina's defensive backs, and continues on with Marcellus Ryan.
Yeah, as I pull up the highlights here, a guy from Sarah High School, which is one of the, perennially produces some of the best talent in the country. And to me, that's, again, as I alluded to in the beginning, as we keep talking about here with the Carolina pipeline here with Coach Hawkins, that's a big deal in itself going in there into Sarah. Again, Carolina, not necessarily a program with a lot of cachet on the West Coast, but Bill Belichick is that cachet.
Yeah, and different kind of corner, right, than what you had here with Lewis. 5'10", 160, very much a ball hawk, smooth, great eyes. You could see him being a very good zone corner because he's great when he's looking at the quarterback. He's very aggressive. When he sees something, he trusts it. He comes up aggressively. That's run and the pass. Tackles above his size. 5'10", 160. That's really the question with him. Can he gain some weight? Still has his whole senior season. Rated very similar to Lewis, 3-star, number 43 cornerback, again, from that Southern California area, Los Angeles. And when they asked about his commit, no secrets. He said it was all on Mondo. That's Coach Armando Hawkins. Chose North Carolina over Washington, Arizona State, Oregon State, and USC. So if you're Washington, you're probably pretty upset because a lot of your board is going across the country to UNC. But if you're UNC, you're saying, all right, this hire that we made is immediately paying dividends. Because everybody says they're a great recruiter and they have great relationships. But to see those relationships translate across the country, I think speaks volumes. And it shows you that not only is Coach Hawkins going to help with this class, but he's going to help with future classes because he builds those kind of strong relationships.
And don't like to correct you, D, but it's Armand Hawkins. They call him Coach Mondo, but it's Armand Hawkins, not Armando Hawkins. So I just wanted to keep it right for the Carolina fans out there.
I'll appreciate that. I'm here with we're in South Florida, so there's a lot of Armandos running around.
Yeah,
it can get confusing.
Definitely, without a doubt. So as we keep things moving here, a couple more topics to get to. One of them that ties into last night's game with Notre Dame, Ohio State, of course. And again, like this video, subscribe to the channel. We got over 30 live with us right now. Appreciate you all for joining us here on Group Chat Football Live, our national show that we talk daily transfer news, recruiting news, coaching rumors, speculation, which is what we're going to get into right here. And that is Al Golden, someone you mentioned. D, we're here in South Florida. We obviously have our Canes Insight website. So we are familiar with this man, Al Golden, right here. Someone who was the head coach at Miami. It was a tough time at Miami when he was head coach. There was some tough circumstances that he was dealing with in terms of the NCAA. But we got a good look up close at, his abilities. And as a head coach, it didn't work out great here, but he's completely rebuilt himself as the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame this year, had a stint in the NFL as the linebackers coach of the Bengals, and that is where he's rumored to be the favorite for their defensive coordinator job. And anytime a guy has the opportunity to make that leap to the NFL, especially in today's day and age of NIL, we understand the type of coach that Al Golden is, very much about the principles, and came in here with a code, a book 300 pages. You're going to have to refresh my memory on what he called that thing. But basically he's an old school football coach. And I think that the move to the NFL, on top of, having an amazing season this year at Notre Dame and wanting to capitalize on that just in his career, I think this move kind of suits him well for how the way the college game is trending. Yeah,
I think most college coaches, if they had the opportunity in the NFL, that's where they would be, just because of the calendar, some of the difficulties with NIL, the portal. It's just, to them, if they're going to deal with all the money stuff, they'd rather be at the professional ranks and not have to recruit as much. That's not everybody, but that's a lot of people. So you could see Al Golden's seeing this not as a lateral move, but certainly as an improvement. Coach was Zach Taylor at the Cincinnati Bengals, so the familiarity is obvious. 55 years old. So the thing with Golden, we've followed him for a long time, of course, being in Miami. It's interesting. He was at Virginia as a defensive coordinator and really did a phenomenal job. Gets the head coaching job at Temple. That team was also built on defense. Goes to Miami as the head coach, brings in his friend Mark D'Onofrio, and defense was really the reason why he ended up getting fired at Miami, because they had some pretty good offenses and they had a lot of talented players on defense that got drafted, but their defenses were perennially some of the worst in the country, some of those underachieving groups in the country. When he left, that defense immediately got a lot better with Manny Diaz. It jumped from the hundreds into the top 10 with the same players that Golden recruited, which were good players, but put in a scheme that fit them better. Now, upon reflection, I think one of the things with Golden is the type of defense he wanted to play, bigger players, more physical players, more assignment sound players, maybe guys that can handle a lot mentally and don't need it to be so simple because they do a lot of different things. Didn't really fit at the University of Miami, where you have smaller players, faster players, more explosive players. You want to let those guys rip. You don't want them thinking about a million things and slowing down. So it just wasn't a fit, and it really hurt the defensive performance of the Canes. Goes to the NFL, has experience there, also spent some time with the Lions, goes to Notre Dame, and you look at the numbers this year, I mean, just totally off the charts in terms of 14.3 points per game, second in the nation. That's for points allowed. Total yards surrendered, 298.3 per game, top 10. So his numbers were outstanding. You saw Notre Dame's defense all year, much more aligned with how he wants to play defense, with intelligence, the size of the players, the physicality, the ability to do multiple things, and he had tremendous success. So that Bengals move makes a lot of sense. He'll be able to deal with pros. He could build his scheme around players that he's able to acquire in the draft. Doesn't have to worry about recruiting them. He could just say, this is what we need, and get them. There's the familiarity. He obviously had tremendous success at Notre Dame. They just played in the national title game, and if Golden were to move on, the question becomes, what's next? You have a defensive-minded head coach in Marcus Freeman with himself having a defensive coordinator background. That'll be an interesting coordinator search to watch if Al Golden moves on as expected.
Yeah, and just, if you're Golden too, I'm just throwing this out there. I'm sure deep down he wants another opportunity as a head coach, at some point in his career. He's 55 years old now. I think the way it ended at Miami, he sued Miami, and if I'm not mistaken, that I don't even think that lawsuit is completely settled yet. So I think that the college aspect of that might be tough. But if you go in and you fix the Bengals defense, which obviously with Joe Burrow on that side of the other side of the ball, like, you feel good about the offense and what they're gonna do. If you can fix that defensive side of the ball and like have one of the better units in the league, and the Bengals have a resurgent season, he puts a couple seasons together. Call me crazy, but I think he might be, if these are hypotheticals, but he could be a potential NFL head coach.
Yeah, maybe that's a better fit without the recruiting.
Knowing what we know, I think it might be a better fit.
Yeah, so look, kudos to him for turning around his career. I think it's interesting that he didn't have a head coaching job from when he got fired in 2015 to right now. We're heading into the 25 season. Doesn't look like he'll be a head coach anytime soon. That's a full decade without being a head coach. That's a long time. I know he's a younger coach, but now he's getting into his upper 50s. I guess younger coach kind of runs out at that point, but
we gave it to Bob Diaco yesterday.
He looks great. but yeah, so usually, a guy that's had success as a head coach, like let's say at Temple, and then has a bad tenure at Miami or school like that, usually they get another head coaching job. I think of like Jim McElwain, Will Muschamp, guys like that who it didn't work out at one of these more higher profile schools.
I think the lawsuit has to do a lot with that too.
Yeah, it could. So interesting path for Al Golden. If he does leave to Cincinnati and you're the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, you're very happy with his tenure. And I think you're confident that you'll be able to keep it rolling with a defensive-minded head coach in Marcus Freeman, still having a tremendous influence on what you do on defense. You got great players like Moore. You got a future there with Notre Dame on defense that you don't get alarmed. This is just kind of the price of success.
So we'll wrap things up with a move that kind of went under the radar, I thought, but I think it's one to keep an eye on without a doubt. and it's in the SEC here, is Harrison Bailey, quarterback, former top 10 recruit, or I should say top 10 quarterback recruit, is a Florida Gator. And he's been around the map now here. So he started his career at Tennessee, then went to UNLV, and then from UNLV went to Louisville, had a really good showing in their bowl game at the Sun Bowl here. And now it looks like he's landing as the backup quarterback. You would expect that they're not going to have, a real quarterback battle in Gainesville this year with DJ Lagway. But it's a really interesting case with Bailey, just looking at his path, because hasn't really had the full-time job anywhere, but his numbers aren't all that bad. It's not like he's throwing a ton of interceptions or anything like that. Big guy, 6'4", 6'5", good arm. I mean, why do you think it just hasn't clicked? Has it just been a wrong fit, wrong time sort of situation for him?
He's kind of crossed paths with some pretty good quarterbacks, but I don't get it, quite frankly, to take and look, first of all, if you're the Florida Gators, tremendous move. After you lose Purdy to Wake Forest, someone who, it's hard to sell a starting job when you have DJ Lagway, right? So a guy like Purdy who wants to start, you're not going to get him because you have your starter in DJ Lagway. He's going to be one of the most, exciting talents here in this 25 season, and he'll be projected with every kind of Heisman list, all SEC list, you name it. So to get a starting caliber quarterback with that person in place is going to be difficult, as we saw with Purdy, who didn't want to be the backup, goes to Wake Forest. To shift to Bailey, home run for the Florida Gators, who we saw this year, really we've seen the last few years. They have played their backup quarterback quite a bit due to injury and other factors, and there's been limited success. So you're very happy to have a guy like Harrison Bailey. That's from the Gator perspective. But just looking at the player, I really don't get it. So you look at his 2020 season, right? He's with Tennessee, so SEC caliber competition. Goes against Vanderbilt. I'm just looking at the games where he had over 15 attempts, right? The games where he really threw the football. Vanderbilt, 14-18, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. Pretty good. Florida, the team he just transferred to, 14-21, 111 yards, 66%, 1 touchdown. Not the most, downfield passing attack, but he was accurate within the game plan in that limited opportunity. Then really doesn't get another opportunity till you go to UNLV, his game against Nevada, 16-27, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick. Not terrible. I mean, you could win with that. Then you fast forward here to 24. He's at Louisville. He's behind Tyler Shuck, who NFL caliber quarterback, plays at Washington. Shuck sits out the bowl game because he's getting ready for the NFL. Bailey plays against Washington, wins 35-34, 16-25, 164 yards, not blowing you away from a yardage standpoint, but 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. His rating, his QBR 92.1, his rating 158. So that's really all the games that he's played as the predominant starter, right? Over 15 attempts. You see the size. His release to me is a little awkward. It doesn't look like the most natural and easy release. But, I mean, this is a big quarterback that can throw. And he's been in good systems. I mean, he's been with Jeff Brom as good as it gets from a coaching standpoint. So, I think a great pickup for Florida.
And I'll say this, we're talking about the physical stuff, but it tells me something at the quarterback position. We see guys transfer, and we see guys transfer sometimes multiple times, and it's not because of a talent thing. You see Harrison Bailey's transferred. Now this is 4th school, and he's still getting looks from big-time programs. It tells me that, because remember, when we talk about this transfer stuff, the film is one thing, but these coaches are doing a lot of background research on, the character of the kid. What are they in the locker room? What is he as a leader? And this is a guy who's going to be your backup quarterback, right? Most likely. This is a guy who's going to have to be an example setter in the locker room. It tells me a lot that Florida, a guy who hasn't played all that much, he could have had sour grapes. And I don't know the situation. Maybe there is at a certain spot, and I'm just unaware of it. But for him to continue to get these looks tells me the character checks out in a big way. And I think that is a big positive if you're a Gator fan.
Yeah, the character, the experience. He's got underrated athleticism too, had a 4.39 shuttle in high school. Again, I think this is a guy who probably should have been playing at the G5 level, the lower power 4 level as a starter. But again, great move for the Gators. For Bailey, I'm just surprised that it didn't materialize into a place where he could start. Looking at the Gators transfer portal class as a whole, I have to say, if you would have asked me a few months ago, I'd have said their portal class is going to be huge. Their high school class is going to be rough. Their high school class ended up being very good, a top 10 class. So they made a huge surge there. You get Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, two of the very best receivers in Florida, two of the very best receivers in the country to play with the DJ Lagway. You got Ben Hanks, one of the best corners in America, could be a day one type starter. So you did very, very well at the high school level. Portal has been lighter than I expected. You add J. Michael Sturdivant from UCLA, who's a really, really talented wide receiver. He's going to play a lot. Beyond that, you get Kofi Asare from UMass, Michael Caraway from Southern Miss, and then you got a punter from Michigan. So smaller class than I anticipated, given that you had the momentum with DJ Lagway. You did lose a lot in the portal if you're the Gators, right? We talk about defensive players, particularly in the front seven, going out the door, Pyburn, Searcy, several others that you just, that went to major programs and they just felt that there was a better opportunity. Now you're going to play very good defense. You were playing very good defense at the end of the year. You're anticipating continuing to play that caliber of defense. They're definitely trending in the right direction. But again, as I pull up this list in the portal, I mean, you lost a lot of talent up front, guys that you were counting on. Justice Boone, who didn't have a huge year as expected, but he goes to Arkansas. I mentioned TJ Searcy, Kelby Collins as well. Those guys are going to Alabama, Texas A&M, big schools. Pyburn going to LSU. Of course, Jakeem Jackson following Coach Raymond over there to LSU, one of your better corners. So I think the Gators will be fine. But for a team that has top 10 aspirations, I think you're going to see a much bigger post-spring portal window, because this portal window was not as voluminous as I expected. And maybe some of that is because you're counting on these high school guys to play a big role for you.
Yeah, I think Bailey was a nice piece to add to the roster late here in the cycle, because if you didn't add him, it might have been a dicey situation there. You would have been relying on some young guys as your backups in the spring. They probably would have added someone post, but you always want your quarterback there in the spring so that he can learn the offense and get with the skill position guys.
Yeah, no, listen, quarterback room, I'd say LSU with Garrett Nussmeier and Michael Van Buren in the SEC. You got to put this quarterback room right up there with them. With these two guys, you feel good about both these guys starting SEC games. And with Lagway, chance to be one of the best players of the country, one of the faces of college football based on his physical ability and upside.
We're keeping things moving here on Group Chat Football Live. The college football season's over, but the off season is the fun part. And that's what we have covered for you guys here every day on Group Chat Football Live, Monday through Friday as we go live. We appreciate everyone who was on with us today. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, get in those comments, ask questions. We appreciate everyone who's interacting with us live here as always, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.